All right, well, I do want to begin really quick by thanking everybody that made this possible. Y'all have been a great crew to work with, and so that's been super duper. And I want to welcome everybody to one of my favorite joints on earth, and I hope that your morning's off to a good start. So crossover was my writing prompt. And of course right away my brain turned right to pop culture and all that biz, and I thought about like Mork from Ork existing in the same universe as the Fonz. But it was a good writing prompt, so really quickly I realized that it had some personal ramifications for me. And so I dug in. Now, crossover, as I came to think about it, it's about fleeting moments. It's also about that state of ambiguity that one feels when they're in transition. And I think that this can be a source of uncertainty and anxiety, but it's also a state of great creativity. And so I guess what I settled on to talk about today was how we can harness that creativity so that we can live within a context of change, a context of crossover, and by doing this by being a self-directed learner. So let's dig in, huh? Now, I personally believe that the 21st century is going to be a time of great transition. And really, what this means is crossover is going to be the context within which we live. Thank you. And what do I mean by this? There are big forces that animate the world, right? We've got economies, the climate, geopolitics, and all of this unfolds really without any attention paid towards our individual lives. And when these big wheels come grinding your way, the best thing that we can do is ride along or yield, but make sure that we stay out of the way. And these aren't just abstract concerns, and I'm not here this morning to give you a dose of the old doom and gloom, because I think that these are real lived experiences, and it's not all bad either. I'm going to grab me some water. Take our context here in Denver, for instance, right? This city is under some massive change right now. It feels like we're in the midst of like a manic creative period. I see that we've got young tech startups. We've got world-class craft beer. I think that's happening this weekend, the GABF. Craft distilling, craft food, and everything seems to be booming. I'm also super excited to be here in Denver to see some of the cultural effects that come from the legalization of marijuana. And I think that we can be sure to see the arts and music scenes are going to be doing really well. It's for certain. But there's unintended consequences of legalization, right? I know that my rent is up, and I bet rent is up all over the city. And I think cost of living is going to keep going up. And this is to say, who knows what tomorrow will bring? We got to be on our toes and nimble. And so what I do know is that I think in order to really thrive and do well within this context of change, that we've got to be able to navigate an uncertain path. And by this, I really mean like you've got to find a comfort zone within this state of crossover. And I think really that we're all probably doing this already, but intention is important. And I think with good intention, we can really do well within this thing I'm calling crossover. Take for instance this elk here that I bumped into in the Rocky Mountain National Park. An elk is active mostly during dusk and dawn. They're crepuscular creatures. And we usually see dusk and dawn as a fleeting moment in between day and night. But for the elk, their entire universe exists there. So I think what we have here is a matter of perspective. The truth is plain. Some creatures can really thrive in this environment. I think we could too. I also see that some places exist in crossover. I took this beautiful picture in Tucson, Arizona. I see that the borderlands are a distinct creative space. Of course, it's a great engine of cultural creativity. Now, I try to think of a good example of this cultural creativity, and not to be too flip, but I settled on the Sonoran hot dog. You folks familiar with this? All right, it's delicious, but you start with a Frankfurter, which I think came from Germany, gets wrapped in bacon and grilled, and you serve it on a Mexican bun with beans and mayo and salsa, gets served up with a grilled pepper. Now, it might sound like some kind of Frankenstein's monster, right? But this is delicious and super authentic Mexican food born on the border. And I think it's no contradiction that you see Tucson, Arizona, and Los Angeles vying to be the capital of this cuisine. Now, this is only to say that some cultures exist in crossover and thrive there, and really, this is the only place they could exist. So I guess the trick then is to keep the right perspective and to practice being nimble of mind. And I think this way, crossover, when it comes our way, it becomes our own turf. And I think when we have new experiences come our way, they'll fall right into our wheelhouse without too much effort. All right, and that brings me to this here. For me, the most important survival strategy for a person living in crossover, and again, I think this is all of our context, is to be a self-directed learner, or to use the fancy word here, autodidacts. It's a little too fancy for my tastes, but it fits the bill. I want to say that when I think about this, I envision self-directed scholars in charge of their curriculum, and not as a way to prep for a future disaster, as if that was possible, but I think just to remain flexible as the world unfolds around us. So this is a skill set that I'm trying to express. And I gotta say that I don't see this really strictly as being a way to like gather up marketable skills, although I think that's super duper important, right? Because the bill collector comes a knocking. But I also see this as a way to find self-satisfaction and a sense of meaning in times and places where otherwise that kind of thing might be rare. So it's a little utopian, I'll admit it. I'd like to share with you my own path as an autodidact. Unfortunately, my history as an autodidact is a really sad story of my own intellectual pursuits being interrupted by institutions of higher ed. I wasn't able to do this on my own. And I'll say I was a precocious kid, and I was a really busy reader. But of course, I bored easily, and I would act out, which put me in trouble with just about every authority figure I ever came across. And so it was that I barely graduated high school. I scraped by with bare minimums. And once I had that thin little diploma in my hand, I swore the whole thing off. I promised myself that I'd never return to that kind of situation, that I would only be in charge of my own intellectual pursuits. And at that time, I was pretty obsessed with philosophy and literature. And so it was that I took a job as a dishwasher, and during my breaks, I was reading the likes of Baudelaire and Dostoevsky and Foucault, and many years unfolded in this way. Many years and many books unfolded in this way. I was pretty happy, although I think my wife might have called it a road to nowhere. Now, my life took a major change, like a super duper crossover, if you'll allow me that. In the year 1998, my friend and roommate and a very dear person to me committed suicide. Now, I found his body, and I was the one that had to make some really, really difficult phone calls. And I'll say that this was horribly devastating to me. And in the immediate aftermath, I turned violently self-destructive. Now, happily, this was a really short period in my life, But unfortunately, it was bookended with me getting stabbed in the back on New Year's Eve of that year. Now, I can't stand before you and tell you that I was blameless that night. I was at a punk show, and I was drinking, and I was being rowdy. So that's on me. But when the knife landed, I didn't see it coming. I was stabbed just above my right kidney to the depth of 3 inches. Boy, and when I saw the blood, I fainted clean out. And so it sounds a bit like a cliche, but I awoke the next day in the year 1999 in a hospital bed with a lot of stuff to sort out, and I had the time on my hands to do it. So really early in that process of me thinking about how to get my life together, I hit on the idea that maybe higher ed, the structure of higher ed, would prove to be a good distraction for me. And so it was that I enrolled at Metro State. We were Metro State College back then. I had a great time, and many years unfolded in that way. And again, I ended up with a diploma in hand, and I found myself in the same situation. I said, no more of this higher ed. I was sick of it. I was sick of having people directing me, and I didn't want to have to jump through hoops to earn grades anymore. But I'll tell you that the years had changed me, and I saw that my past studies were frivolous and abstract, and what I really needed was to work on some real-life skills. And this was made all the more important because I had the student loan folks knocking on my door. Bills were coming due. So, and it's this idea that inspired me now to start two small businesses, Lost Weekend Rickshaw Service and Clean Getaway Soap Company were born right at this time. And this idea of building practical skills is also what motivates me now to be building a tiny home with my wife. We're calling that venture the House for Ants. All right, I got to check this out. These were some of the finest years of my life, I'm sure. I loved riding a rickshaw around Denver. This was a super incredible time for me. I spent countless hours in the saddle of this rig, and I experienced the pure joy of being the captain of my own tricycle in downtown Denver. The freedom was incredible. Now, the library was a big help to me because I started off on this biz from scratch. When I picked up this frame, it was in pieces and weren't running, and I didn't know how to start a business. So my first trip started here at the library, and it was here at this branch. And so I came in and walked out with a handful of books on small business administration, and every book I could find on bike mechanics. So once things got rolling, I hit those books, and once I got everything rolling, I returned to the library again because I, of course, had to check out, I was looking for books on basic circuitry, marketing and branding, and I got into Denver history at this time. I came to realize that the tourists would tip me better if I could spin a good tale. So I found that I really had to lean on, it was either sports or Denver history. So I really had to crammed on the Denver history, and it turned out to be just great for all of us. People got good stories. I learned a lot about this city, and it was a cool way for me to feel connected to Denver. So I got some accomplishments that I count for this time period, the least of which, or not the least of which, rather, is 4 years of my bills getting paid. So that's pretty awesome. And I haven't missed a student loan payment, and I think that's pretty good. And some of my big accomplishments at this time, I think, are a little less concrete. I had the pleasure of being in the saddle in 2007 when the World Series was here in Denver. That was amazing, super duper fun. I was also in the saddle in 2008 when the Democratic National Convention came here to Denver. That was a surreal experience, and I'm really happy that I got to witness it. But I'll say, after all this is said and done, the favorite and the coolest thing that I got to do was I rode a rickshaw in Washington, D.C. in 2008 for Barack Obama's inauguration. I understand that this was the biggest gathering of Americans in history to date, and it felt like it. It was so amazing. I I don't know if y'all have been there, but there are tons of hills in that city. So that was a wonderful time. I realized at the moment that history was being made around me. And the fact that I got to see it on the back of a giant tricycle, I think was really precious. So the project that I started about the same time as the Rickshaw Biz is this clean getaway soap company. This has been a blast. I think, though, that I would be remiss if I didn't tell you folks that this has been a close collaboration with my wife, Lindsay. I think that it can be really difficult working with your spouse. For certain, and we've had many fights, but I think we've come out of this really strong. I think we've really excelled at it, and it's poured over into other aspects of our lives. I might be running a little tight on time, but I did want to mention that the name Clean Getaway Soap came from that interest in Denver history that I picked up here. I named it after Soapy Smith, who is an 1880s Denver con man. Back in the day, this guy was fleecing suckers down on Larimer Street out of their hard-earned money. And I really wanted this business venture to have a sense of place, and I wanted it to be grounded in Denver. So I was trying to summon, the snake oil salesmen and all the con men that were part of our Denver history. And the library helped here too. Like the Rickshaw Biz, boy, we didn't know zero about soap making. We still knew very little about business. So we rolled in here, and my library list included every soap making book I could get my hands on, and more that I summed in through interlibrary loan. And we also read books on organic chemistry, more small business administration, and of course branding. And once we got all of that rolling, I returned here to Central Library to research intellectual property law, of which this is an amazing resource. If you ever find yourself in that position, this is the joint to stop at. So the soap biz has been rolling for 6 years, making money. I think that's a pretty good accomplishment. Lindsay and I have managed to get retailers from coast to coast. So I've got folks in San Francisco and Atlanta, Chicago and Denver selling this stuff. And boy, I'm super happy to say that our product was featured in Sunset Magazine, and we've had an Associated Press article written on us. And that feels pretty good starting off from like the zero scratch place we did. And I was hoping my wife, Lindsay, was going to show up, but she wasn't able to make it today because I was going to cheese it up. And I'll tell you that I think that really the biggest success is that we've had a good partnership, and it's been fun, and we still want to be married to each other. So that feels like a big accomplishment. Now, so I do have mixed feelings when I announced today that we are quitting the soap biz this year. Christmas is going to be our last show after 6 years. Really, it's been fun and life-changing, but as the business has grown, I found myself making more soap than pursuing my own intellectual interests, and this began to spell trouble. And so, happily we're quitting, and folks, do forgive me, but here comes my shameless self-promotion. Lindsay and I will be hustling soap this Saturday at the Horseshoe Market here in Denver, 44th and Tennyson. So we've only got two more sales that we're going to be at before we close up, so it might be fun to come and check out our snake oil sales. Please come see us. All right, and so another collaboration that I'm working on with my wife, this other big old scary project, is my lovely wife Lindsay and I are building a 160 square foot tiny home. We're doing it from the trailer up with our own hands and our own limited skills. Although I'll say that we're getting better. I'm getting way better with the saw. And I think if you're wondering how the heck I talked my wife into this crazy thing, I'll tell you it was her idea. So I'm the one along for the ride. I'm having fun though. We hope to live in a commune-like situation with my sister-in-law, but I don't really know where we're going to end up with this thing. It's up in the air, and I don't want to think too much about the future of this. I know it's kind of reckless and not really like me, but I'm having so much fun just in the now building it that I don't want to bother with tomorrow right now. Here's some fun pictures of some work days we've had. And as you might have guessed, there's a trend here. This journey started off at the library. And we've checked out countless books on carpentry. I've been looking at books on tiny home culture, homesteading, animal husbandry, how to raise an orchard, living off the grid. Oh my goodness, and even humanure, if you guys know what that is, composting toilets. It's been a crazy ride. It's interesting. And the list goes on. This is a living project, so I'm often distracted by new interests that tie in. So, what next is a big question. I know this is about crossover and this kind of thing, and I always like to make sure that I got my next project ready so that those crossovers are smooth transitions for me. After we winterize the tiny home and put it up for the season, I'm planning on returning to my long-term obsession of artisan bread baking. That's going to be a lot of fun. I also have made the spoken goal to my family that I am going to brush off all of my seamster, tailor skills, and knitting skills because I want to build my own outfit from head to toe. And it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. We'll see how it goes. And I wanted to mention really quick that it's not all smooth sailing being an autodidact. After years and years of me struggling with trying to pick up, am I doing good on time? To pick up American Sign Language, and I've been studying on my own using books and websites. I've really have had a lot of difficulty with this, and I sat down with my brother-in-law, and he's actually taught himself Russian. He can read it and speak it now. And we both determined that what I was missing was a community. And this is to keep you motivated, and to have folks to talk to. Being an autodidact can be lonely, and I think some things can't be learned in a vacuum, right? We need each other. We're social animals, and just having your nose in a book all the time is not a good policy. And my dear friends, that leads me to plug this, because we don't have to be alone, right? We got this here library. I think if you started off at www.denverlibrary.org, this is a great portal into everything we got going here. There's downloads, there's databases, all kinds of books. You can chase whatever the heck interest you got. And it's really been my university. And I think some of my biggest accomplishments have come from here. I want to mention really quick some of the super duper cool stuff that I've identified that I think is really rad that y'all might want to plug into. So we've got the Idea Lab. It's our teen makerspace here at the library. There's 3D printers, there's musical equipment, fancy computers. The sky's the limit in there, but I haven't been able to get in that room. Until now, they're going to have Adult Swim Tuesday nights from 6 to 8. You'll find me by the 3D printer. I hope to see you there. And I'm super excited to announce Volume Denver. Some staffers here at the library are putting together a really cool database of local music. It's going to be streaming and downloadable without digital rights management. And I think this is going to be a cool way to plug into the music scene, maybe see how marijuana is affecting things out there in the world. Of course, we've got Fresh City Life here at the library, and there's this super cool adult education, adult programming that we're starting here, system-wide, called Engage. You can find all those schedules on denverlibrary.org. And I think last but not least, I want to tell y'all that me and Lindsay are on Instagram. So you can find us at House for Ants or at Lika Minots. That's my name spelled backwards. LEKIM_Enots and house_ for ants. Anyway, folks, check out our projects, and I thank you for your time. Thanks for having me. Well, we started in earnest building it on July 4th of this year, and we've been picking it away at it every chance we get. But the progress has been slow. Right now, we've got walls up and we've got sheathing on it, but it needs Tyvek to winterize it, and I need a roof to keep the snow out. And once I've got all that up, So we're just going to seal it up because I think it's going to be too cold for us to want to work it, doing all the finished detail. And we're just going to pick that up in the spring. So it's kind of nice. I think by the end of October, I hope to have it winterized. Okay.
Where are you going to bake your bread in the tiny house?
Well, you know, I think the thing about the tiny house that I understand is that my outdoor footprint is going to be huge. And so one of the books I've been checking out is How to Build an Earth Oven. So I think I envision like a full outdoor kitchen, including this earth oven that I'm going to build. I'm just going to be outdoors getting a suntan more often. You know, I think my sister-in-law makes fun of me that I've got like my interest du jour, and which I think paints me as kind of flighty, but it's not the case. I think I generally have like a big picture trajectory, and that all kinds of interests fall under that. But I tell you, I do leave a lot of room for fancy and whim, because I think the thing that I hated about higher ed is that regiment and having somebody else tell me what I should be chasing down. So I like for things to be a little organic. I do find that I return to like a bunch of ideas, but I just love browsing the stacks and seeing what books call out to me. And I think I'll tell you something else. I really try to make sure that I'm not just reading, that it's not just intellectual work. I really want to ground these things that I'm doing and be in my body making stuff. I find that the Penrose stuff to be interesting and kind of a shame. Because, I mean, I know that at DU you've got these academic students, and they're certainly connected to the internet and know how to go about this. But I think that browsing is really tactile and hands-on, and if somebody is really internet savvy, I think that they'd be able to summon in their own books, and I think that would detract actually from browsing if there was that there. You know, I think that the Penrose situation is kind of extreme, and I can't really speak much to an academic library, as I've only mostly been here in the public library. But I don't think that books are going to go away, and I don't think that browsing experience is going to go away. I think that I'm a really good researcher, and I really enjoyed that part of academia. But nothing beats browsing, as far as finding like unintended discoveries. I hope that continues. Yeah, well, I do got to admit that I have a fair bit of free time on my hands. But I think I find myself to be, you know, of average intelligence and usually less than average means. So, you know, I think with the help of the library, all of this is pretty possible. But your question was like, how do I direct it, or, you know, a lot of it's whimsy, but I just feel really driven, and I'm just always hungry for more. You know, and I think a big secret I will tell you is I haven't owned a television for over a decade. So I would recommend filling your television with water and making a fish tank of it. So I think you'll find yourself more productive and happy. Yeah, I guess it is a crossover. You know, I probably haven't gotten a tattoo in a decade. So it's something that I left behind, but I grew up in a really artistic environment, and most of my friends have become very talented tattoo artists. So I got to be a sketch pad a lot as a kiddo. And you know, I got to say that I was really afraid that it would become too large of a barrier for me, my tattoos, but I don't know why not. I've just been really lucky that I've been able to have so much success and be a tattooed person. You know, truth is, I forget that they're there.